I first went to the Brooks Range when I was 18. I'm 64 now. It's not quite 50 years, but it's pushing half a century I've been going there. As the biggest wilderness in the United States, it's a place that gives me sort of hope for the future. That's kind of how I feel about it now as an old man. If I add up all the miles that I've walked or paddled, bicycled or ice skated or skied, I think it ends up being about 7,000 miles just in the Brooks Range. There may be no better place on Earth, really, to engage with the environment as a primal human animal than the Brooks Range.
Could you just describe Roman for us?
Oh, jeez. Roman is, do you want me to, what did Russell and Forrest say?
Roman is intense.
Roman is like, Roman lives up to his own legend. That's what I'll say about Roman.
He's got a rough side. I think that's part of what drives him. He's got some inner demons that make him Roman Dial. And he's been a real strong friend of mine for 25 years. He's reinvented himself a half a dozen different times. And every time he reinvents himself, he's always the best at everything that he does. He was the top of his field in climbing. He broke ground in hell biking and fat biking, big tree climbing, pack rafting, and now in science. But some of the most accomplished people on the planet have their rough edges, and Roman certainly does.
I think I fell in love with Alaska when I was a 9-year-old boy. My parents were having marital problems. They sent me to Alaska to live with my uncles in the Alaska Range. My uncle picked me up in his Ford pickup and drove us 2.5 hours to this coal mine called Usabelli at the end of the road. It was the wildest place I'd ever seen. There were no buildings, no houses, no fences, it's just forest. And that changed my life. I've often wondered if the reason I did the things I did were to impress my dad, but I'm pretty sure I didn't do them for that reason, because he was a self-proclaimed city boy. So I've never felt like, oh, my dad's gonna really like this. He's gonna love me now. Looking back, the reason I was drawn to the mountains was dealing with physical and emotional challenge and overcoming hardships was really satisfying. And then you start chasing that feeling. In 1985, Chuck Comstock and I decided to climb the east face of McGinnis. I'd say it was the hardest mixed rock, ice, and snow climb I'd ever done. I felt very fortunate that we made it to the top of the couloir and went to the summit. It was like 30 below that night. Chuck and I were making our way down, and he was probing in the snow across this col. And he got out towards the end, and he just disappeared from sight. That rope was sort of peeling through my hands. I couldn't really stop it. There's nothing else I could do except go off the other side. And as I was cartwheeling, I had a lot of time to think about this. And I'm thinking, dear Lord, don't let me break any bones. If you have to, just kill me. I was ready to die. I tumbled, and then I came to rest. And we were okay. When we got down from McGinnis, it was skiing out to the road that I was sort of coming to grips with what had actually happened there. It was a real turning point for me that day. I decided I wanted to have kids. I wanted to marry Peggy. I don't need to be a dead legend at 30. I'd rather be like, a happy family man at 85. We named him Cody. We didn't know if it was a boy or a girl until he was born. And of course I wanted a boy because I wanted to try to be a father to a son in a way that my father hadn't been a good father to me. He was born, and I thought, wow, my life is going nowhere. I'm going to go back to school and get a PhD and start a career. I'm a father now. I can't just be scrounging a living like this. From a really early age, I wanted to be a scientist. Once I became a professor, it was sort of part of my responsibility, to do active research. We'll raft about 30 miles over 2 days and then go on a 3-day hike up to look at some acid seeps. Then we'll sample every named creek. This river, at the end of it, has a community that's receiving the water. So we'd like to know how many contaminants of metals are going down to them. Can you guys do the pH? So, let me see. Wow, it's a lot more acidic than I thought.
It's almost 5? 5 to 6.
What I like to do is take everybody's, what they think it is, and then you average it.
Yeah.
That way it's like everybody's equal. In 2020, we spent a month in the Brooks Range and ran into this rusty water. And I'd been going to the Brooks Range for 40 years, and I'd never seen that before, and I didn't know what was causing it. This expedition is to study a rusting river right from its source, to see what's happening as it comes out of the ground. These rivers, they're changing the ecosystems in ways that affect people. Maybe we can help understand why the salmon are dying off and causing real hardship to people who live off the road network. I don't like to do solo trips. For me, I really like to be with people.
I started working for Roman, doing my senior thesis on the Brooks Range work.
This is busted open.
That went really well, and Roman said, you know, why don't you just roll straight into a master's? So I said, hell yeah.
Russell asked Roman on the trail, like how he picks people, and I think he said something like he looks for durability. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but I think that's great.
A lot of people I've gone out with, it's like there's a plan and we stick to the plan. With Roman, it's like constantly changing.
Style. He definitely has developed his own style over 40 years of traveling across Alaska wilderness.
Roman's got a gear that nobody else has. He's the master at pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Most field science in Alaska is helicopter science. It's highly funded, highly expensive. It's like drop-in science. To replicate what he does with helicopters, you'd need millions and millions of dollars. But he's out there doing it on a shoestring and getting much better results.
The science dictates where we go. So we beat ourselves to death bushwhacking. There's one creek we forded 135 times.
He's been out there doing this stuff for 40 years now. So he's seeing these longer patterns that, unless you're there for a long period of time, you're not going to pick up on.
In 1988, we moved to California and I went to graduate school at Stanford. And so the first trips that we did in California were to like the beach, walk around in the woods. I had a backpack carrier and I could ride him on the bike. I was delighted to be a dad. My dad, he never even knew his dad. I don't think my dad really knew how to be a dad. Maybe I was trying to make up for what I didn't have. When I was a kid, I loved the outdoors and I loved nature, and I think all kids do. And you know, our son became very interested in nature and the outdoors. And when we moved to Alaska, it seemed like he was old enough to go on like a week-long backpacking trip. So when he was 6, we flew out to this Aleutian island named Umnak and did a 60-mile backpack trip there. When we first arrived on Umnak, there was sort of this cowboy and his family there, and he introduced himself. And I said, oh yeah, I'm Roman Dial, I live in Anchorage. And then he bent down and he asked, well, what's your name, little guy? And he goes, I'm Roman too. And I was like, wow. You know, he'd always been Cody right up to that point. And so after that, he always went by Roman. The early trips were about discovering nature. The later trips were about challenging ourselves, watching him challenge himself with whitewater and carrying weight and bushwhacking, letting him sort of develop as a person in the outdoors by making his own mistakes.
You have to imagine the bond that formed between Cody and Roman. Roman would take his kid to the farthest reaches of the Aleutians or the depths of the Brooks Range. Most parents would be too terrified to do that, but it was how Roman wanted to raise his kid in the wild.
You know, I wanted him to be with me all the time from when he was born.
We look downhill from here and most of the vegetation is dead. So between here and the creek, we're seeing this brown line of dead vegetation coming out, starting right here where the water's coming out.
None of the stuff that I've studied looks like such dramatic change happening right in front of your face. But in my lifetime, this stuff has been changing, and it appears that it could have a pretty big impact short term.
Yeah, I'm not like a chemist or a geologist, but this dark red makes me think there's got to be something more than just iron. As the climate is warming, permafrost is thawing. Rock that hasn't touched water in thousands of years is now coming in contact with water for the first time. And it causes a chemical reaction that produces acid and liberates the metals from the rock.
I mean, it was really pretty. The rocks look blood red, but it's dumping acid metal into the environment in a really fragile place.
Did you check the pH yet?
It's maxed out.
It is a paradox. You have these moments where you find these things and it's exciting and joyful in a way. But, you know, there's another part of you that's kind of terrifying.
I think we should just keep going up it. Yeah, right here. Look at that. It's over, is that like 100?
Yeah, the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than any other part of the planet. The Western Brooks Range is like the epicenter of all of that. For those of us who've been immersed in the Brooks Range for as long as Roman and I have, there's a certain amount of grief.
Cody Roman had decided to take some time off from school and travel through Mexico and Central America with the goal of going to Brazil. He traveled on his own and emailed me that he was going to be in Costa Rica in a national park where we'd been when he was younger. I didn't hear back from him after he'd gone into this national park. Well, he should have been back, so I raced down to look for him.
Los grupos de rescate que buscan al estadounidense Cody saben los
The son, following in his dad's footsteps, vanishes in a Costa Rican jungle. Desperate search begins. ABC's Nick Watt.
Cody Roman dial and environmental science is brand new.
The authorities there in Costa Rica, they wouldn't let me go into the jungle. But, you know, I snuck in, I went anyway. And I would walk up the ridges and down the creeks yelling, "Roman!" You know, but we didn't find anything. As any parent here would know, losing your child is about the worst, it is the worst possible thing that can happen to you. I would rather die myself than lose a child.
Como podrán imaginarse, perder un hijo puede ser
There are times when grief can be really burdening and it's hard to even see color. I still can't really listen to music. It hurts me. I can't say I've ever gotten over it, but over my lifetime I found that if I'm not feeling great, I can go someplace wild and I come back feeling better. Humanity is much older than civilization. A lot of what makes us a human is how we interact with the natural world. To be able to go to a wilderness place and interact in sort of a fundamental way is really, I think, healthy for us.
The Brooks Range is a 600-mile-long arc across the top of Alaska. You've got big glacier peaks going up to 9,000 feet, vast herds of millions of caribou migrating through there. You can travel for weeks at a time and not see anybody. It's a place that demands self-reliance, and if you don't have your shit together, it's a place that'll take you apart. But if you figure out its ways, if you find a way to travel through it, you'll realize what it means to be fully alive as a human being.
While I was looking for him, I'd think back and wonder, how much of this was my fault? I was in part responsible for him being there. He was in Central America, in the jungle, in the wilderness, because I'd instilled in him this interest in going to places like that. I'd shared them with him, and I'd encouraged him on this trip. I looked for my son about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And when I finally, found out that he had died and saw his remains as we carried them out of the jungle, I was really crushed.
For 2 years, it was agony watching Peggy and Roman wonder what had happened to Cody. I think there was a certain amount of relief and release when Cody's remains were found. That whole experience of what he went through losing Cody was powerful for all of us who were with him and painful to watch. But he ended up working his alchemy on that. He and Cody shared that passion for science and for immersion in nature, and I think he's transformed that loss into a desire to tell that story of what's happening to their favorite place and, to pass the baton.
I can't replace Roman, but it does feel good to be able to share with other young people in a way that I did share with Roman.
I think you'll beat me.
I think of Roman as my friend and a mentor, someone I care about deeply and someone who I know cares about me. He's the reason that I want to continue to do science. And I want to continue doing science in a way that gets me into the place that I'm studying.
I don't think it's possible to kind of quantify or even describe the love that a father has for their children. You know, we shared everything.
You smell worse than me.
As I look back over my life, I've found that with every setback I've had, I can almost match some experience in nature or some trip in the wilderness that helped me cope with pain.
Yeah, it gives me joy. Maybe in some sense, the best way to fight grief is to look for joy.
Cutting through the avenues, I'd always find my way to you. Beside the hook, the hammer lies. And fumbling round in the smoke, spending time chasing ghosts. Hold me down, child. Hold me down, child. I'm a ghost to you, here it goes to me. A bird's eye view, San Luis. I'm a ghost to you, here it goes to me. A bird's eye view, San Luis. I'm a ghost to you, here it goes to me. A bird's eye view, San Luis.